Portuguese, English, French and Spanish explorers would at first operate closer to their home ports. They colonized the western coast from Senegambia to Loango, now Senegal to Angola. On the Atlantic coast, they created on a grand scale what the Arab merchants did on the Indian Ocean coast, a combined trade in slaves and ivory. Kill two birds with one stone. Slaves wrenched out of their forests to carry elephant tusks for hundreds of miles through the brush, then sold when they arrived with their cargo. The price of a human was equal to that of a 20-pound tusk. We don't have data on the number of elephants killed for their ivory at that time, but we do know that between the 15th and 19th centuries, around 10 million humans were exported into slavery. You can surmise that during that same period of time, the number of elephants that were sacrificed also counted in the millions. During that era, the wildlife in the south of the continent experienced a period of terrible tragedy. In the mid-17th century, Dutch settlers landed in Table Bay at the foot of Table Mountain. On this majestic site, they established a supply post. It was the first act of colonization in that part of Africa. From that point on, and with great determination, the newcomers conquered this wild land and tamed it. Slowly but surely, their carts advanced through the country. And the colonists had only one idea in mind: clear the land and transform this untouched territory into farms adapted to their crops and their livestock. The Europeans had only one radical concept for farming in this savage land: clear everything. Bit by bit they stripped the land, eliminated the predators, but also got rid of the maximum number of herbivores. For one simple reason. Not only were they rivals for grazing land, they could above all possibly transmit disease to their livestock. The contamination was particularly lethal among ruminants. To defend themselves from this risk, the settlers would eliminate practically all the wildlife. This painting by travelling naturalist William Cornwallis Harris, which dates to 1841, shows the valleys filled with elephants. 30 years later, this was no more than a memory. During that time, the slaughter was so terrible that they proved fatal for certain species. In 1779, the blue antelope was officially declared extinct. This antelope had a sad distinction. It was the first African mammal in history whose extinction was directly attributed to humans. 73 years later, it was the quagga, hunted into extinction. Between 1780 and 1880, 20 million wild animals were slaughtered in South Africa. Throughout Africa, hunting by Europeans had a devastating effect on the population of wild animals. At the end of the 19th century, the hunting reached an animal sanctuary that had so far remained untouched, East Africa. The coastal regions of East Africa were explored very early, but until the 19th century, the interior remained one of the most isolated regions of the continent. It wasn't until 1858 that a European reached Lake Victoria, situated at least 500 miles from the coasts. The lake straddles the equator and is flanked by the two branches of the Great Rift Valley. This entire region stands apart within the geology of the continent. A few million years ago, tectonic and volcanic activity created lava fields, valleys, lakes, and mountain ranges. For thousands of miles along the Rift Valley, the diversity of the landscapes and ecosystems favored the rapid growth of a multitude of species. Here, the lives of the animals blossomed, both in variety and numbers, in unbelievable proportions. The narratives of the explorers and the settlers reported such a profusion of game that very quickly rich hunters, some very famous, were attracted to Africa. In 1709, American President Theodore Roosevelt came here to hunt for almost an entire year. During that same time, the Prince of Wales, who was to become Edward VII, boasted about getting so close to the rhinoceros, lions and elephants, he could shoot them from a few feet away. A few hunters had a code of ethics and respect for game, but most others inflicted real carnage. During one hunt alone, hundreds of heads would be taken. It was convenient to have a finger in every pie. Someone could go hunting and use it as a cover for trafficking, taking advantage of their hunting license. The elephants and their ivory were once again high demand. During that time, between 3 to 4 million elephants were slaughtered. The pressure on African wildlife was so tangible that it started to worry a few hunters. The aristocracy and the upper class had developed a hunger for exotic hunting in the colonies. As the scope of the slaughter unfolded, they feared that the game would vanish, along with their beloved hunting in the African landscapes. The debate carried over to London. Inside the salon, in the halls of power, the voices of the hunters paradoxically mixed with the voices